We were due to have Hannah Fennick with us this afternoon, and sadly she can't be with us, so we're very grateful to Miguel for stepping in, Miguel Trenkel Lopez. He has started off his career in nuclear decommissioning with Magnox. He's now moved into a wider role. He was involved in developing the drones to go inside some of the old nuclear plants to assist in decommissioning, technology which was unthinkable when I was Energy Minister just over 10 years ago. And the changes there have been absolutely extraordinary. But more than that, he is an entrepreneur. He is the person behind this game here, which he will talk about, called Megawatt, which is designed to get young people interested in nuclear and understanding decarbonisation. So we'll get a good chance to talk about that in just a moment. So, Andrew, let me start with you. If we're going to get young people to seize the opportunities which new nuclear presents, they've got to understand the government strategy, what nuclear is going to mean for the UK. Where are we now in terms of large-scale nuclear, SMRs, fusion, AMRs? What's the strategy in a nutshell?
Thanks, Charles. It's very hard to put it in a nutshell because we're doing so much. And you're right. I mean, there's just about 10 years since you were in government, and I do think that what we have done in the past 9 to 10 months since the creation of the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero and the creation of the job Minister for Nuclear has been transformative. We have launched Great British Nuclear, we have launched the Small Modular Reactor Down Selection competition, which is the fastest of its type in the world. We have begun the capital raise for Sizewell C. We're upping the pace at Hinkley Point C. We are discussing openly the prospect of a 3rd gigawatt scale reactor to be built somewhere post Sizewell. We have launched the Nuclear Skills Task Force with a view to getting young people interested in STEM and onto education programs and therefore into the nuclear sector. We're doing work on future nuclear fuels. We're doing agreements with Sweden, the USA, Japan, Korea and the UAE in terms of what we can do together to develop the technologies of the future and bring the jobs of the future, so that we can all contribute to what is a genuine revolution in the nuclear energy sector around the world, that the UK is leading the way in. So I hope maybe that's a little bit more than in a nutshell, Charles, but we've been very, very busy. And I'm very proud of the work that we've done, because there is no net zero without nuclear, right? It is impossible to see a way that we reach our net zero targets, our ambitious targets we've set ourselves and other countries around the world have set and are discussing here at this COP, without nuclear power playing a major part of the energy mix. And finally, after many years of procrastination and many years of negativity and around the nuclear sector, we are in a place where there is real positivity, buoyancy, enthusiasm and excitement in this sector, and I am delighted to be playing a very small role in helping to deliver for it in the UK, and actually delivering for future generations as well.
Okay, let's move into that a little bit further. You'll see already why Andrew has the reputation for being the most enthusiastic and energetic minister in the whole of the British government. And that when I was a student at university in Edinburgh, the big young people campaign then was about stopping Torness being built. It makes me feel very old that Torness has not only been built, it's now about to be decommissioned as well. What has changed for young people to move from being people who are incredibly hostile 40 years ago to nuclear to now a much greater enthusiasm? And let's hear from you, Andrew, and then let's bring Miguel in.
Well, it's the climate situation that we find ourselves in, and a recognition that if we are serious about combating climate change, keeping 1.5 alive, doing what we can to ensure that we get a grip on emissions and do what we can to support developing economies continue to grow whilst ensuring that we meet our net zero objectives, that it cannot be done without nuclear power. And I genuinely believe it's a young generation who are looking at the state of the planet, realise that something drastic needs to be done, and have grown up in a world where Chernobyl and a lot of the negativity around nuclear is distant to the point of being ancient history, and now look at it in a much more positive light. It's clean, it's safe, it's secure, it's reliable, it creates good jobs, and it delivers on our net zero objectives. And I think that is why young people today are much more favourably inclined towards nuclear than, say, previous generations. Interestingly, when you look at all the surveys of the British population anyway, it is the parents of the younger generation that remain the more negative about nuclear. Now, it's still a net positive in every demographic, in every age group, in every nation region of the UK, but the more negative view is held by the parents of this new generation coming through. So, yeah.
So Miguel, take us through your journey. You did a mechanical engineering degree, and only then you went into nuclear. But you also went into decommissioning, which is sort of the unsexy part of nuclear in many ways. So tell us, what was it which took you into that? And what did your friends say? Not your nuclear inclined friends, your wider circle of friends. What did they think about you going into the nuclear sector?
Yeah, so like you were mentioning, in the past we had this kind of anti-nuclear movement, and the environmentalist movement kind of started with Greenpeace, and it was about weapons. And as we move towards the issues of today, we realise that climate change is a really big threat. And so I got into nuclear because I've always enjoyed energy, and I studied mechanical engineering, and I applied to a number of different grad schemes, including nuclear. And so I kind of fell into decommissioning, as it were, but I realised it's an important part of the puzzle when we're talking about making nuclear sustainable. So that's kind of why we're here today. We're here with Nuclear for Climate. Nuclear for Climate is an initiative of 150 different organisations around the world that comes together for COP28 to communicate with people why nuclear is now part of the solution. And it's been really exciting to be here. And I feel like we're part of the change that we're seeing in young people, and we're now working with a lot of youth organisations as well that kind of consider us part of the youth movement along with nuclear.
So tell us more about Nuclear for Climate. So you say 150 organisations from every continent, many countries around the world. How are you then taking that message out? What are you doing at COPs?
Yeah, absolutely. So Nuclear for Climate has existed since COP21, but I think it's really kicked off at COP26. So we bring together youth from all around the world. We have every continent represented. We have over 20 countries represented. And what we do is we make conversations about nuclear personable and approachable, and really show that we're also proud to be part of the nuclear movement, which is why we wear these bright blue t-shirts that say, "Let's talk about nuclear." And so it allows people to see that nuclear is something to be proud of, to be part of the solution. We believe that together is better, so we want to work with renewables, with wind, with solar, and with hydro to achieve net zero and end fossil fuels, because without nuclear, we make the job much more difficult. Yeah. A lot of the modelling suggests 100% renewables is very difficult, if not impossible. And if we want to reach, let's say, 70-80%, we need nuclear as that backup, dispatchable, clean source of power that can support our transition to clean energy.
So, Andrew, one of the challenges people have if they want to go into nuclear is very often that they have made the wrong choices at a school level before they decide what A-levels or higher in Scotland they're going to do, and then they find they're locked down to being able to go into the engineering courses. How do we then start to win hearts and minds at an earlier stage? And then let's bring you in, Miguel, on that as well, because that's where Megawatt, I think, has been playing a really important role.
So you're right, Charles, and we've got a real challenge on our hands. We have a gap of about 50,000, actually a skills gap of 50,000 between where we are right now and where we need to be if we're going if we're going to deliver on all of the exciting nuclear projects that we intend to. And that's why we launched the Nuclear Skills Task Force, chaired by Sir Simon Bolam. He is going to be launching publicly the task force in January. We're looking to work with academia, from schools to colleges to universities, to see what we can do to not just to encourage young people into STEM, because very often there are young people who have gone and chosen the right courses at school, college, university, but the places in the apprenticeship schemes or within industry are just not there, or the PhD courses are not available to the number that they need to be. So what can we do to increase the capacity within the organisations that need to employ these young people, the institutions that are going to train these young people, and get them into the jobs that we are going to need them to do and deliver in if we are going to deliver even half of these exciting projects that we set out. So I'm really excited and I'm really proud, actually. The Nuclear Skills Task Force is one of the first things that I did when I came into the department. It was an agreement between myself and Alex Chalk, who was the Minister for Defence Procurement before he went on to be Lord Chancellor. And we saw the MOD and the civil nuclear world working in silos, right? And it was utterly ridiculous, because the skills gap that exists in nuclear is one that both military and civil nuclear will have to address. So pooling resource, if you're at school, you want to work in nuclear, frankly, I don't care if you go on to wear the dark blue of the Royal Navy, the bright blue of Rolls-Royce, or the bright orange of EDF. You're going to work in the nuclear industry, so let's work together to find a common solution, and that's what we're doing through the Skills Task Force right now, and I'm very excited to finally get it publicly out there from January and start those conversations. I'm encouraged that every single apprenticeship scheme that is out there in the nuclear world right now is so heavily oversubscribed. I don't know the exact figures, but the recent NDA apprenticeship scheme had something like 150 places. There were 2,000 applicants for that course. How do we grow the space available? And I am also encouraged that there is a lot of work going into encouraging young people into STEM, because my 15-month-old daughter came back with a report card from her nursery saying that she had been engaged in a STEM project, something to do with glittery paint. But still, that at 15 months, a bright future in the nuclear industry beckons ahead of her.
It's more challenging in Scotland to get her into nuclear, perhaps, but we may.
Yeah, well, that's a different discussion for a different day, Charles. Yeah.
So tell us about what you've been doing with school children.
Yeah, so this challenge of the STEM funnel, where at a lower age, kids are really excited by science, they think it's something they should be doing when they grow up, and then as you get older, they sort of lose interest in it. I think bringing that back is really important. So what I've been doing, I set up a not-for-profit where we attract people to the energy sector through a game called Megawatt, and what we're really trying to do is show that by teaching them about energy and climate change and the importance of working in the sector and making it interesting and fun. People are naturally attracted to nuclear when you see it in that kind of system approach, and we want people of all walks and colours to take up subjects in STEM, and so it's really exciting. We're growing and scaling, and love to give you a game at the end of this if you're interested.
That sounds good. I'll be up for it. Yeah.
And yeah,
very good. Tomorrow night in London it's the nuclear industry annual dinner. 10 years ago that would have been 95% middle-aged white men or older. Now it's probably 60-70% male, but the balance is changing. How much of your agenda is also about wider diversity and making sure that it's a much more representative group of people who go into nuclear?
Of course, yeah. So I came through on the Nuclear Graduates Programme, which is an NDA programme, and they're fantastic at having 50% men, 50% females on the in the programme. Nuclear for Climate is also 50-50, so the people that come here and speak about nuclear, we have people a very even gender balance, and it's a generational thing, right? It's going to take time, but we're going in the right direction, and I think it's really great.
It is a generational thing, you're right, it will take time. I visited the Hartlepool nuclear power station. It was the first nuclear power station I visited, and when that was built, there wasn't even a women's toilet in the control room part of that power station, because there was no woman on site. So it is a generational thing, and it'll take time to change, but what encourages me is the fact that in my visits, in my dealings, and in my working with the nuclear industry, some of the most impressive people I have come across have been young women starting out in the nuclear industry. You know, they've got fantastic people to look up to. Gwen Parry-Jones, for example, who was the first woman to run a nuclear power station, and is now heading up Great British Nuclear for the government. Other people like Julia Pike, who's in charge of the Sizewell C project. So they've got great role models on which to look to, and it is encouraging, but it will take time. And the nuclear industry is not alone in this. The oil and gas sector is in the same position. There are other industries equally working hard to diversify, to make the representation across the board from all areas of society relevant, present in that industry, but it will take time to deliver. It's not just going to happen overnight.
And Andrew, can we do more to enable school children and students to go inside nuclear facilities? Not defence ones, but civil ones. Realistically, I think many people I've spoken to were motivated when they went and saw a turbine hall and saw the magnitude and enormity of it, and were just overwhelmed and became very excited about that, and that was what drove them to careers in the sector. Yeah.
One of the issues that the nuclear industry has is that it is very well understood. And if you're a school kid, say for example near Dungeness or near Hartlepool or near Sellafield or near Hinckley, you will probably have had a visit to the nuclear power station. You will probably have a relative or a couple of relatives that have worked on that plant. Anywhere else in the country where there's no nuclear footprint, there is such little understanding of what the nuclear industry is and does, and the opportunities that could arise within it for young people. So what the industry and government absolutely should be helping with this needs to do is to spread its wings a little and start telling the good news about what they are doing, what the future of that industry is for young people, for the planet, for our economy, in parts of the country that have had no experience of it thus far. And that way we generate interest, enthusiasm, and bring in a whole new generation of people into our industry from parts of the country that subsequent to this would never had any experience in dealing with it.
And let me ask about the exportability of those skills, because the UK has a very good track record. Decommissioning is a case in point, but where we're doing a lot of work in Japan, we're doing a lot of work around the world because we had the first nuclear plant, we've been the first to decommission, and Sellafield was such a particular challenge that it puts us in a very strong position to give that guidance. First of all, to you, Miguel, I mean, do you think that is part of an appeal to younger people, that they will have skills which they can take around the world? And Andrew, to you, how do we commercialise that more? How do we then say, okay, new build nuclear, where's our national champion? Can we have a programme which makes sure that we do have a national champion rather than potentially losing out in the competition? And how do we drive this forward to make sure this happens?
Yeah, so the skills that are required to work in the nuclear industry are varied, and there's a lot of opportunities to whatever your interests or applicability are. Yeah, sorry, what was the question?
So the appeal of being able to work overseas. So you've got a new build program in the UK, SMRs developing in the UK, many other countries looking at that. Would that be something which would appeal to young people?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the opportunity to come somewhere like Dubai and talk to people about nuclear is a fantastic way to get people to say, hey, look, this is an industry that you can come and work for and really get out of the country and talk to new people and export. Yeah.
Charles, can you stop putting ideas in people's heads? We need these skilled workers in the UK before they start travelling overseas to deliver on other countries' projects.
But working for British companies.
Working for British companies, okay, I get you. In terms of the exportability of what we're doing, we do have a champion. Look, I mean, we are working with Rolls-Royce around the world in target markets to sell their small modular reactor technology. We think it's a world leader, and that's very separate to our domestic down selection competition, in which we've got lots of international interest and of which Rolls-Royce is a part. But internationally, selling from the UK, creating British jobs, we're working with Rolls-Royce to ensure that we can secure the contracts overseas to deliver small modular reactors to partner countries to help them decarbonise and become more energy secure and independent. And it's good for the UK economy as well. So it's a win-win win.
And then let's put that into a bigger context. So in order for us to get to net zero, we need nuclear, but we need a massive investment in the grid to rebuild the grid. Another part of your portfolio, we've got a huge amount of investment to go into offshore wind and other sectors like that. All of those areas are facing skill shortages. How do we address those more collectively? What does the government do to ensure that we have the homegrown skills to meet that?
Well, I mean, this is a subject on which I spend a lot of my time working, talking to industry. Yeah, I've talked about the Nuclear Skills Task Force. We've got a wider discussion with the energy sector in general about the skills gap that we have, because we're going through the great grid upgrade at home, huge transformation in how we deliver energy across the country. We've already built the first, second, third, fourth and fifth largest offshore wind farms in the world, generating power right now off the coast of Great Britain. We've got huge ambitions for carbon capture, utilisation and storage, pumped hydro, for new technologies that are just being explored right now, and the existing oil and gas sector, which will continue to be important for the next couple of decades, at least as we transition away from fossil fuels, and obviously as we've been speaking about our nuclear project. So yes, there is a whole, it's going to take a whole industry effort to build up that skills base, get young people interested in the subjects they need to be at an early age so they can go on and have fulfilling careers. The priority for us sitting right here and the net zero nuclear stand is in nuclear, but in offshore wind, in CCUS, in hydrogen, in tidal, in hydro, building the grid that we're going to need to deliver this energy across the country. There are huge opportunities, right? Lifelong careers, high wage, high skilled jobs that are going to be built in the UK, and I'm very, very excited about that, but it doesn't come without its challenges, and that's why we're pooling industry together from all sectors to see what we can do collectively to ensure we have the right people in the right place to deliver on these right projects for the country and the planet.
And now some of those in the nuclear sector have to have nuclear engineering skills, but many of them would be basic construction work. And so if you look at Hinkley, a huge amount of those jobs are the people who are doing the basic civils. That are we putting the right focus on those skills as well? Because for many people from perhaps disadvantaged backgrounds, this offers them a ladder opportunity to work in that sector without going to nuclear degree.
So Charles, the Nuclear Skills Task Force that Simon is launching in January, it's not just looking at the PhD level people that we need in nuclear, although they are obviously vitally important. It is also looking at the entire spectrum of what a nuclear workforce is and who we will need. You're absolutely right to reference Hinkley. I don't know if many people here have been to visit Hinkley. 10,000 workers on that site right now delivering that project. You know, the vast majority of them are construction workers, and so we're going to need to build up that skills base as well if we're going to deliver on this. But you know, I think it was something like 74% of the British population have a skill set that would enable them to have a rewarding career in the nuclear industry. Yeah, and not 74% of the UK are not nuclear physicists. Just to put it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Miguel, you've heard Andrew talking very enthusiastically about what the UK is doing. Would you have a message for him from, this may be a slightly harsh question to put to you on the spot, but for him, things where you might want to see the government do more, where you want to see any more clarity, and to give Andrew the chance to respond to it?
Yeah, so the skills gap starts at school, and especially for the nuclear industry, when the curriculum tends to talk about energy in a very simple way, renewable and non-renewable. So you have these buckets of hydro, wind and solar on one side, and then you've got fossil fuels and nuclear lumped together on the other. So one's good, one's bad. And so working to build up the curriculum to tackle this and demonstrate that nuclear is part of the clean solution is one way that I think the government could help. And I think, it's really important that we can do that.
Well noted. I'll take that back. I don't think you're wrong, by the way. I completely agree with you, and it will take some work with the Department for Education, with individual education establishments, with the devolved administrations to get that work established, to encourage change in the curriculum, the narrative, and to engender an enthusiasm for energy in general, right, across the country at all ages.
And I guess most
it's not just, I mean, we're talking about young people, but it's also about reskilling and upskilling. It's about people who are in established jobs right now who maybe want to move across, which we really haven't touched on today because we're talking about young people. But that is also a key part of the mix.
Which what the new campaign is trying to achieve,
100%.
right? Which is the reskilling.
Absolutely.
I guess more related to what you're up to, if we can move all those Hinkley Point C people directly to Sizewell C quickly, without any gaps, that would be fantastic.
Well,
so we get Sizewell C started.
We're doing it. We've got as fast as we can, right?
Yeah.
Well, very good. This is a short session, and I'm afraid we're out of time. Andrew, as a minister, is rushing round in back-to-back sessions, so we're really grateful to you for being part of this. Miguel, thank you to you as well. I think what you'll have found at the end of this is, one, the UK is deadly serious about nuclear. We're incredibly positive about it and the opportunities which it brings and the chances which it does to enable us to decarbonise more rapidly and in a cleaner and more secure way. But it also brings fantastic opportunities, and hearing, Miguel, from you as well about what you're doing to realise those opportunities, to make others realise them, is something which I think we've all found inspiring and very engaging. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Great session. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks.